everyone, I'm Tally, this is Farrell, and welcome to Board of It, otherwise known as the Cole Worley Appreciation Channel. If you are regular viewers of our channel, you'll know that we're big fans of the designer Cole Worley, with his games making up a solid chunk of our top 10 games. As such, today we're going to be reviewing Arcs, his newest game, and the game the people you probably prefer to watch over us are calling the best game of 2024.
So Arcs is a kind of novel take on the classic 4X genre that you love, in that you're going to be building fleets of ships, you're going to be battling with them, you're going to be producing resources, you're going to be taking over planets and building your cities on them, and you're going to be getting access to powerful abilities that will break the game in some way. But what makes it novel and Arc feel unique in this genre is the fact that it has a core that is akin to trick-taking, and you use this system of almost trick-taking to take the actions, so you're very constrained. But let's get deeper into how you play.
In this review, we're only going to cover the base game and the rules for the base game. For the setup, there are a number of different setups, with each player count having a number of unique layouts, which will be further altered if you use the Leaders and Lore mini expansion. The actions are Build, where you can place buildings and ships onto the map; Repair, where you can repair those buildings and ships if they've got damaged; and Move, where you can move your ships around the map. Then we have Battle, which of course lets you battle using your ships; and Tax, which lets you collect a resource that matches the planet that you are taxing. And then finally, there's Influence and Secure. Influence lets you send agents to court cards, and Secure lets you take those cards into your hand as long as you have more agents on the card than any other player. Sounds all pretty straightforward so far, right? Where it gets novel is how those actions are taken. One player will always have the initiative, which means they get to play the lead card for the round, setting the suit. That player gets to take the number of actions according to the number of pips on the card that they play, typically with the lower value cards having a higher number of actions. Then each player will either get to surpass, which means they play a card of the same suit but with a higher value, and they will also get to take a number of actions according to the number of pips. A player can use copy, where they play any suit card face down and they get to take one action, which mirrors one of the actions on the lead card. Or they can choose to pivot, where they play one card face up of any suit, but again, they only get to do one action. If any player did take the surpass action, they then take the initiative for the next round. The player with the initiative can also declare an ambition that matches the icon on the lead card that they play. This allows them to take an available points token and place it on the matching ambition. At the end of the chapter, i.e. when everyone has played their entire hand, the ambitions will be scored, and they give points for having the most of a certain type of thing. Tycoon, Empath, and Keeper all score for having the most of those matching type of resources, which can be through resource tokens, but also icons on court deck cards. Tyrant scores for having the most captured agents of your rivals, and Warlord rewards players who have the most trophies from battle. And the player with the most of those things will score the first place points, and the player with the second most will score the second place points. The game will end when a certain number of victory points has been reached, or at the end of chapter 5 if that limit is not reached. And the player with the most victory points will of course be the winner. How to talk about Arcs? My, it's a tough one. Like every other Cole Worley game, this game will be a lot of people's absolute favourite game, but there will be numerous others who wouldn't touch it with a 10-foot barge pole. There is also a very solid debate online between fans and detractors about how much of the game comes down to the cards that you're dealt, and thus whether the winner is just determined by luck.
Now, we don't buy into that at all. I think, firstly, over the course of a game and multiple chapters, you would expect the luck of the draw to even out. The second thing I would say is that arguably Arcs as a game is dealing and working with the cards you're being dealt. That is the game. And thirdly, Arcs has an ever-emerging game state, and a hand that you get dealt at the beginning of a chapter and you look at it and you go, this is not good, often through the way the game works, will actually expand into something maybe even beneficial to you. Maybe you end up getting control and you're playing the lead and you have the initiative, and it turns out that the other players don't have any of that suit, and then they're stuck only getting one action per turn where you get multiple, even though the cards were a low number, things like that. And with that, I think it's very much a game that will end up being determined by skill. And I think that's what's been reflected in our plays, where it's always been very close and it's always been won by skill. It's never been just, oh, okay, I concede I have a bad hand, right? We work with it.
This leads us nicely to one of the greatest things about Arcs, which is the feeling of getting where you need to be with the hand of cards that you've been dealt. Generally, you'll have a good idea of your goal for the round and which ambitions you would like to be declared. Getting there, however, is the challenge. We've been continuously surprised at how you can spin the hand of cards that you're dealt into masterful plays and devastating reversals of fortune. There are some really terrific touches which really allows this system to flourish, one of them being the initiative.
Initiative is everything in Arcs. It lets you declare the ambitions that you want to declare. It also allows you more actions than the other players, usually, and it most importantly lets you set the tempo of the game while not allowing other players to play as they would like. There are two spicy elements to the initiative system that really elevate it: declaring an ambition and seizing the initiative. When players declare an ambition, they usually will turn the value of the card they play to 0, meaning it is exceptionally easy to surpass and for someone else to claim the initiative. Therefore, declaring an ambition is an action which simultaneously gives you control of the game by having the ambition you want in contention for scoring, but will also take power away from you by making it very likely you'll lose the initiative and all that power that comes with it. On top of that, anyone can seize the initiative, which supersedes playing the highest card of the lead suit. However, to do this, you must play 2 cards, and one of them is basically discarded, meaning you're going to play one less card in that chapter because you've given one up. It's a high price, but as we said, the initiative is everything and it might well be worth it. This all condenses into such a tight, tense, tactical system.
Turning to the actions themselves, Arcs does something that we both love. It makes the actions simple and quick, but the decisions are tough and thorny. Each individual action, except for battle, could take mere seconds, but the decision about which card to play and how best to utilize the actions on those cards is a whole different proposition.
Similarly, we very much enjoy how combat is handled in Arcs, because it's very quick and punchy, yet impactful and engaging. Essentially, the attacker makes all the decisions. They will roll 1 die per attacking ship, and they can even roll less if they so want. And what's quite fun is they have 3 sets of dice to choose from, and they can mix and match how they want, with each set of die having kind of different results or impacts, so they can adapt to the situation they're currently in. Then the attacker will deal hits to both themselves and the defender, how they like, and it's resolved more or less, unless they're going to be able to steal something, in which case the attacker again picks. It means that combat is over quickly, and it's very fun and vibrant and allows the game to roll along at a nice pace, which is a nice change to many of the common 4X games that you'll be used to, where you might end up rolling rounds and rounds of dice, which, if you have a lot of players engaging in a lot of combats, can grow quite tiresome. There's so much design elegance on show here, with the court cards being a prime example, just because they are a very simple concept that serves so many different purposes. So the first thing is they're a point of interaction for the players, because most of the court cards are very interesting and they're things players want because they give players special abilities or special actions, and otherwise make them more powerful and adaptable in the game of Arcs. So that's the first thing. The second thing is you have to send your agents out to acquire them. But you can only acquire them if you have more agents than anyone else on that card. So it becomes a battleground for the players and also a kind of nasty little game, because if you lose that battle, they get to capture your agents and it gives them impetus towards the tyrant ambition. So on top of that, the cards also often come with suits, and these suits will match the different resources available. And the cards, for say the relics or the psionics, they will count towards those ambitions, meaning that if a player has them, it's giving them a foot up in that ambition. So you can see how there's all these different little ways that a simple card can affect the game and just give so much to gameplay. It's truly wonderful design.
There's also a mini expansion called Leaders and Lore. The leaders add a slight asymmetric tilt by providing some sort of alteration to the base game rules. And the lore cards are similar to court cards, except they are a little bit more powerful and also they can't be stolen. You'll get a few of these in the base game and many, many more in a small expansion pack. Now, if you're expecting root levels of asymmetry, then you're going to be disappointed. The changes here are much more subtle and really just add in a little bit of replayability and provide some novel situations for you to work with. It's the sort of thing that you'll always throw in and play with after your first game or two, unless you're maybe teaching new players how to play Arcs.
At this point, it's worth mentioning how brutal and unforgiving and mean Arcs is as a game. So any ambition that's declared is vitally important, because they're your only source of points, and if you're not getting them, someone else is. And 3 of them concern how many resources you have. Now, there's a very limited number of each resource. So if you're in a 3-player game and the other 2 players have more of the resource that's declared than you do, you're not really going to be able to produce many more, especially not to outpace them. Your only recourse is to steal from those players. And this is facilitated through the raid dice, a set of dice that the attacker can select in certain situations, which allow them to, with the right rolls, steal stuff from other players, including their cards and their resources. Now, obviously that's brutal enough, but then you get to the remaining 2 ambitions, the Warlord, which has you go around destroying other players' stuff on the board, and the Tyrant, which has you capturing their player pieces, so the same time as going ahead of them in an ambition, removing their ability to acquire cards and get out of that position. All in all, extremely player involving, head-to-head, pushing against each other, very, very mean. I cannot describe to you the spike of anger that runs through me when somebody comes into my territory, throws a bunch of raid dice, and makes off with everything I own. It's unlike anything in any game I've ever played, but Arcs is a game of swings and roundabouts, of reversals and saving throws. And what this means is that usually 2-3 turns later, I've gone and done the same to them, so no harm done. It's a game you're going to see some really outrageous maneuvers, people coming back from the brink, and everything slipping away from you right at the moment when you think you're going to win everything. For example, in our second game, Tally came in and did a raid on me, threw a bunch of raid dice. Now, we had the Empath, which wants you to have the most psionics. We had the Keeper, which wants you to have the most relics. And the Tyrant, which wants you to have captured the most player pieces of the other players in play as the ambitions. And I was winning all 3 of them, just about to go over the line and win the game. So she does that, she raids. And the first thing that happens is she destroys my buildings. And I won't get too much into what happens, but essentially, if you destroy another player's building, you can take a card from the court with their agents on it. Now, this was kind of a happy bonus that she didn't really think about. And that card, I had loaded 4 of my agents on. And I'd loaded so many on because I specifically did not want her to get it, because it would allow her to make me discard every resource of a single type of resource I had. So she captures all my agents, She then gains this card that immediately lets her tell me to get rid of all of one resource. So she picked one of the resources we're fighting over. Then she also now has a bunch of keys which allow her to steal my stuff. And then she steals all the resources I have of the other type that we're competing over. So literally in this one turn, she's flipped from me winning every ambition to her winning every ambition. And in some cases, having nothing of that ambition left to even compete with. And that is how I can best describe Arcs. And with that, you'll probably know if you love Arcs or hate it, because it's a game that's very interactive and it's a game that's often zero-sum. One player's ascension means one player's downfall. So you'll also be able to kingmake or gang up on players in this game, which is something that people shy away from. But for our part, we find that because you never actually have that stable ground to begin with, something can always be very easily taken away from you. It makes it hard to keep those bad feelings inside and feel aggrieved when people do take your stuff, particularly because, as I said, you'll end up doing it to them. Now, that's not to say this isn't a tense and fraught game. We've had some very heavy and fraught discussions about rules interpretations, and just generally in terms of the gameplay itself, it's one of, if not the tensest game we've ever played, from the first card to the last.
So, final thoughts. Arcs is as incredible as it is indescribable. There's tension, there's fury, there's celebrations, there's a lot of loss of time, and these are all hallmarks of Arcs. When you play, you disappear into a world of conflict and tactical acumen. And if you want a succinct review, it would be that we played this game 13 times in the first week that we had it.
Yeah, I mean, Arcs is incredible. It's brutal, it's unforgiving, it's novel. You have to think outside the box all the time if you have any chance of winning. And like, I think almost every Cole game is going to be incredibly divisive. I mean, some reviewers are saying it's the best game of the year, 2024. Others don't like it. So I think, yeah, you have to consider that and all the things I've said. But I also think that in some ways, it might be the game that actually intrigues people in Cole if they've always been put off by the difficulty, just because it's quite streamlined and clean. And I think it's more accessible than many of his games, even though it's obviously quite mean. And there's so much more we want to say, but I think we'll leave it there. You know, the excellent player guides, the fact that building them allows you to hold more resources, and then if they get destroyed, you can hold less resources. There's so many little twists and turns in this game that I think you should go and discover it for yourself. But please ask us any questions you might have, and we'll be happy to answer them. So we're going to have our review of the expansion coming up. But for now, we really appreciate you watching this review. We hope it was helpful. Please consider subscribing if it was, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.